I'm just busy coordinating camps and registrations and like in an email circus. So my kids are like the first day I went to the rink, they all cried. I was going for 2 hours. We don't want you to go. I've been here for 16 months, guys. Like sprinting out the door. So it's been really fun. It's so great to see the joy on the players' faces. And of course, we shouldn't be, nor I am also not doing anything terribly complicated, right? Because many of them haven't actually skated since November. So, it's kind of been fun to go back to basics and just see the pure joy of it. And there's no stress about any of it right now. Like everyone's just happy to be there. Less of the bullshit, as they like to say. So it's been good. And actually a cool part is I did all these online sessions, as you guys know, throughout the season. And within my association, they skewed quite young. So I mostly had like U11, U9 players joining in for these workouts, which is really cool. But now my camps are filling up so quickly for those age groups. Normally on the ice, I don't run those age groups, or I have 4 or 5 kids. Now those are my super full camp. So I guess it bodes well for my daughters that I'm getting more experience with the younger whippersnappers. But yeah, it's been fun. It's nice to get back to it. And I'll just do this week here and then have another break till the end of July. So yeah, it all seems fairly back to normal, to be quite honest with you, which is strange.
We're depending on you, Kim. I just I had a Skype with Jim, Jim Plumer at Vermont, and Harry and Peter Smith on Monday. And Jim was just back from his first recruiting trip in 18 months. He went out to Minnesota and watched there was U12s, U14s, U16s, and he was blown away by the talent level of all the kids coming out of especially the American Southwest, like California, Arizona, but just generally. And I've never really heard him talk in such terms before, but he couldn't believe like the skill level, skating level of so many kids, not just 1 or 2. I think he's mainly thinking U12s and U14. So get to work.
Well, it's funny. I'm even watching these kids, and I mean, there are some that are ahead of the curve, and at the young age groups, it's because of their skating. And we're doing such a disservice to these players. And again, this is not an age group I've spent a lot of time with. But clearly in their team practices or their skill camps they've been doing, the skating and the edge work and all that has not been emphasized at all. Because we all know if you spend a week or 2 or consistently weekly with U9s and U11s, edge work and stride, like they're going to pick it up. Like they're sponges. But a lot of these kids are already, unfortunately at U11, kind of behind the 8 ball. We did outside edges yesterday, and some of them looked at me like I was a crazy person. I'm thinking, how do you not know how to use at least the basics of this, right? So I do feel like, there has to be a lot more skill work at the younger age groups and more of a buy-in from parents to do that. And it doesn't always have to be playing a game. And I think in Toronto, we're still way too focused on how many games are the kids playing, how many tournaments are they in versus what skill work they're doing. So between that, edges and shooting, my goodness, the shooting, Tim. Wow. So like they're just not taught anything. It's actually shocking how little they know.
This is shocking.
Yeah.
This is very shocking.
Well, I think, Joni, and again, this is not an age group I've spent a lot of time with, but it seems with boys, they go to hockey camps earlier. They're more committed earlier because it gets a little crazier younger, typically for the boys. Mm-hmm. And so the girls don't take up the sport quite as early. And when they do, often their introduction to it is in more of a house league format and it's sort of like a slower onboarding. Whereas the boys, it's like once you're like, I'm a hockey player, it like hits you in the face. Yeah. If that's what you really want to do. And so I think with the slow onboarding, we haven't really empowered those coaches to teach skill. And the parents are less likely to send their daughters to a skills camp, especially at that age group. They'd rather be with the girls. So basically I'm going to be opening up a whole new market because my daughters are young of teaching pure skill to younger players. And I just don't think it's being done. They kind of go right into house league, right into scrimmaging, and not really emphasize the fundamentals. So, but the shooting is, part of it's repetition and part of it's just a complete lack of instruction on it. So they're getting really bad repetition, even if they are practicing it. And Tim and Wally would both know, like when you have a girl who can shoot, like it still makes you stand out. It's still, I think, a separator. I think at the Olympic level, of course, all of them can shoot. But it still is something that makes you stand up and go, whoa, with the girls at younger levels. So, yeah, these are the things I'll try to fix, Tim. So I'll try to keep up with the Americans, but I think it's going to take more than just my effort to make that happen.
Yeah, it sounds like it doesn't bode well for us down the road if in the largest hockey market in Canada where the reports are not great. I probably would agree with you on that's probably true that maybe generally speaking the girls sort of come to it just a bit later than the guys, like the passion for it or whatever. I think undoubtedly a factor as well is, like we talked about before, when the young guys sort of get interested, they watch everything. They watch all the NHL. They do, and we all know there's a big visual element to learning, and I'm guessing that a lot of the females miss out on that visual element for the ones that would benefit from it, because they tend not to, and it's a generality, of course, but they tend not to watch as much hockey or high-level hockey, so they're missing out on that visual learning element, which for me, when I was growing up, whether it was tennis or hockey stuff, whatever, tennis and golf are probably two better examples for me. I learned so much by watching the best players play tennis, like how to control or hit your backhand, or all those little elements. So the visual learning piece is huge, and lots of kids perhaps missing out on it.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm creating this this library of female only clips, right? So I'm gonna obviously clip a lot out from the world championship, and I've got a ton now from PWHPA and NWHL and even some NCAA U Sports. So I do think I agree. I don't know that they're going to necessarily sit down and digest the whole NHL game or the whole scope of what's on Sports Center, but I do think they love to know why. And so when I share little clips with them and really break it down, the girls love that. And it's even less, it doesn't even need to be like what we would consider a typical highlight. They love even just the most basic clips. When you break it down for them, explain to them, they really seem to enjoy that. So yeah, here's hoping that, I know I'll be using a lot of that with our association to get the I guess well, female only, because I think it's just not, I think why not? I've got this great clip I showed to my campers yesterday of Sarah Nurse doing linear crossovers entering the zone in the PWHPA game. Like, why show Connor McDavid doing it? Like,
why not?
Well, but why? They can watch Connor every night. They can watch Connor every night.
No, they don't see him every night. That's part of the point. They don't watch him. But I would agree with you. Like, I mean, my main point is, if you see, like, I just saw a great little skill the other night, Pietrangelo taking a D-to-D pass and sort of passing to himself. And like, if you find a clip like that, that's good and useful, use it until you can maybe find a female clip that's the same, and then fine, But yeah. So I just think it's limiting to just be focused on the female only. It's kind of the reverse discrimination kind of thing.
Well, but to be honest, Tim, I mean, my business is Total Female Hockey for a reason. And honestly, I'm the only one, or one of the few, who runs girls only in Toronto, of all places, where we have so many girls. It's ridiculous. And still, most people are doing, they just have sort of a general hockey camp. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's shocking. it's amazing to me how many parents, families, girls are like, oh my God, it's all girls, and you have all female instructors, and the amount of excitement and buy-in there is as a result of that, I think has been really powerful for me, and big reason of what I do with my company. So and some of it for me is if it's total female hockey, I should probably be showing clips from female hockey, right? It's sort of brand, it's pretty accurate when it comes to the branding of it. But yeah, I agree with you. There is definitely some stuff on the guys' side that I haven't been able to replicate yet on the female. But I also think it's, there's just not that much access to that type of stuff right now. So I think if people could have female only, I think the coaches and the players so far have really loved it. And they've actually said that to me explicitly. If I show a clip of my junior team doing a skill, they remember it. They remember the girl's name who I said did the thing. They have a more of an uptake. It seems to resonate with them a little bit more. So yeah, we'll see. But it's still definitely a work in progress.
Have you seen that kid that does all those tricks with the puck? He even shoots a slap shot. He shoots an apple off his friend's head.
Oh,
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
jeez. It's unbelievable.
I think he's an Ontario guy. If I'm not mistaken.
Is he a
Can he
native
play?
kid? It looks like, I think he's a native kid. He's incredible though.
Can he play the game though? That's the big question.
Can he skate?
Can he think?
Oh, I don't know. I apparently played college and got hurt his first game or something.
Wally,
I don't know why he wouldn't be able to play the game, because he skates really well, and because he does some stuff skating.
think
His
back.
skills are off the chart.
Think back to those Koreans, Tom. They could all skate and handle a puck and shoot, but they had no friggin' clue how to play the game.
Yeah, but I think it was a little bit like you were talking about watching it. And that, this kid, like you remember Bobby Shrimp, I think, or something, that had all the skills, but he didn't do that well. And or the guy that goes around the world teaching stick handling, Sean Skinner. is it?
Skinner.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
what he does well anyway. I don't know that much about the other stuff, but
yeah.
I sure wouldn't want to be the one sitting there with an apple on my head, I'll tell you.
Wally wants
I
to
wonder
win.
how many friends he went through before it worked.
Wally.
Yeah, I'm glad Dominic got back on because he's been down in the States, and Dominic, you may not appreciate how far ahead you are down there, but I've had a number of people tell me how far advanced the United States is in terms of development of its players.
Oh.
And in terms of scouting and looking for agents, the development there has been extremely good. Like we are behind. There's no doubt about it. Dom, I'm just, I
Wow.
typed in that the number of times you've been on the ice, and Kim's just started, but the number of times you were on the ice last year before the start of the season and before that, I think is an indication of they're getting more ice time, in your case, better instruction, just as if Kim was instructing. And I think in the States, that model of entrepreneurship, private instruction, while it may have created a bit of a dilemma in players developing by playing too much versus having everybody a chance to develop. That's sort of what's happened in the States. Dom, can you comment on that statement? You've got two daughters, they could play with Team Canada, and they might, I don't know if they could play with the USA, but you're watching development in female hockey there. The numbers are rising, and you being involved in the Sharks program, the pro teams minor hockey program, it seems to have a better starting base than we do here in Canada. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I could speak just for San Jose because that's obviously where we're at, and I think it's, you know, obviously I have three daughters that play, so I have a vested interest in improving the program. I know from a standpoint of their overall, like the numbers they have 300 mites per year that come into their program, and that's every year. That being said, at the 15s this year, they were barely able to fill a team on AAA on the boys side. So it's not for the lack of funds or numbers. It seems, on the boys' side, anyways, once they get to a certain level, they all think that they should be going someplace else. It's not good enough, and they got to go to Shaddix. They got to pay $60,000 to go to Shaddix, and this and that, and everything else. And on the girls' side, it's relatively the same, and hopefully trying to change that. So just to give you perspective, so my daughter's a 2006, and there are three girls that are leaving from 2006. Two are going to Shattuck St. Mary's. And one of them, or actually all three are going to Shattuck St. Mary's, paying $60,000 to go per year to go to high school. And the 05 group, the one ahead of that one, I think there was 7 girls that left that were going to Exeter, Chicago Young Americans, Mission, but if you go back to the 2008, 2007 group, when my middle daughter is in, we had 40 girls try out over the weekend for that group. And so in previous years, because so for U14, they'd have 2 birth years, and they would pick a first team, and they would have 15 players. And then the other 15, they wouldn't even have a coach. And they are not a goalie, and there was no consideration. So they would end up going to play with boys, or trying to manage where they would play. And that's so for 2 years. This is our 3rd year being a part of the program. So the 2 previous years, there was this mass exodus. And so I basically I'd said, hey, listen, let's instead of developing a group of 15 or 16, let's develop a group of 32. So basically we had about 40 girls, and it just basically said, hey, we're going to pick the 32. Yes, there's going to be a AAA with the top 16, 17, and then we're going to have the other 16, 17, and like we'll practice together. They only get 3 ice times a week. They get 1 on Wednesday, and then they get Saturday, Sunday. And so I said, okay, well, let's try it. I'll coach. We can run. There's Mark Smith, former NHL player, who has a daughter who's going to help out. And then I have a former collegiate player from Aurora, who is moved to the area, Canadian girl that married, or her fiance is in law enforcement in San Jose. She's helping out. And I said, here's our crew, and let's try this. And so we only lost 1 player. So we had 31 players that basically committed and said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We had the benefit of having the last month prior, having ice times, and being able to just basically, have an emphasis on the girls. Because I think what happens is on the boys side, like at least here in California, they have the numbers, but they don't have anybody that pays any attention to. I'll just be honest, they don't pay attention on the girls' side anyways. When they're younger, they're like, oh yeah, we've got a dad that's going to look after it. Oh yeah, the girls' team, yeah, you're fine. And so the better girls feel like, I need to play with boys to be able to it's so much better. These girls can't even make a pass, and I'm just better served to be playing with boys because the team is better. And so what happens is that these girls that play with boys all the way growing up, and then they end up coming with the girls, a lot of them they play defense. None of them play forward, because they always put the girls on defense, because they can skate and they can angle and they can dump it out of the zone, and they can stand it up at the blue line. And so either they play defense or they're so timid that they have no confidence to hang on to the puck. So I've seen, and I have this from the last year that that we had. It was 06, 07 birth years. The step that the girls have taken just by just empowering them to be able to I use Wally's line all the time. Treat it like your cell phone, girls. Like you would never throw it away. And I get like these looks on their faces, like, "Oh my God, what do you say about my cell phone?" But the and I think like the growth curve on girls is so incrementally steeper than it is of boys because they pay attention, and when they're dialed in, they as I say, and I say it all the time, with boys you got to hit them over the head with a tack hammer to get them to lit like 10 times to get them to do the one thing maybe some of the time. And with girls, you've got to be careful as to not give them too much information, because a lot of times they'll take that too literally, and that's so. I mean, I would say in summary, Wally, yes, there are the numbers here. I think that at least in San Jose, there needs to be. And again, I'm here and because of my girls, and my youngest one is a 2010, so I'll be a part of the program here for a while. But they just need to have the same consideration that they do for the boys, and they don't. And I guess that's probably across the board. But there is quite a bit of talent coming out of this area, and I say there are the numbers. It's just that at those crucial ages, I would say between like 12U to 14U, there just has to be a more concerted effort to be able to have, people that either have girls and understand that they don't want just to be like, you have to treat them like athletes. Just don't treat them like you think, oh yeah, no, like, that's too rough for them or whatever else. Because that's the part of it too. Like I've had great guys I get along with well, and they played on teams with the boys, and they treat them differently. And like my daughter has been like, well, like why? Like just treat me like a player. Don't treat me like anything different. So need to have parents that have had girls involved and then understand that how because then you'll understand that you can't be so literal and it has to be conceptual. So
Wally,
muted, Wally.
your mic's off, Wally.
Yeah, I got 1,000 directions I could go, but I'm going to defer to Kim and then Bob with their hands up. Okay.
No.
And now, Kim, your mic's off. Haha.
Well, you got to follow Wally's lead, right? I mean, obviously. No, I would say, obviously I could chat girls hockey all day, but I think, Dom's point, the most competitive age groups are actually U13 and U15, ironically, because once you get to U18, it's watered down. There's too many teams and there's too many tiers. So for give you an example, at U18 AA, which used to be called midget AA, there's 55 teams in the province. Now at that same age group, there's 20 PWHL teams. So they play, they're all the same age. They're all grade 10 to 12, maybe a couple overagers, right? So now we say arguably there's 75 plus teams at that age group in the province, right? At Bantam AA, right, which would be U15, there might be 30 teams in the province or 24 teams in the province, because a lot of centers can't support, that age group at that level if they're a smaller center. Pee Wee AA has even less teams playing and again, this is the AA level. So it is actually, when I watch the games, the Pee Wee AAs, like if the high level Pee Wee AAs and Bantam AAs are quite elite, and they track quite linearly up into the midget AA and the junior levels, because they really are playing the best of the best, as strange as that sounds. At that time, of course, we know how players can develop. But it does seem, to Dom's point, it is a crucial year. Obviously, when the boys go to hitting, you see a lot of girls come over. But, in the experience I've had with girls coming over, from playing boys AAA, AA, sometimes single A, that panic button tends to go off far too quickly. And I think a lot of that is what they learned in boys. But, I have to encourage them quite a bit to hang on to the puck because they're used to getting rid of it much more quickly. So it is, that poise versus panic is a really important piece. And if they stay in the boys too long, it's been my experience, occasionally you get a forward. You're right, Dom. The majority of them are Ds or goalies. But they tend to throw the puck away far too quickly from where they need to. And that's the biggest piece for learning for when they transition over.
Bob, your hand's up?
No, it
No.
isn't.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Tom is now. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, that was the reason why I made everybody play every position. And because they were all defense coming in, and the majority, and the way they were taught to play defense was, okay, I'm going to stand on the blue line and wait for the play to come, and then I'm going to, like, all of a sudden the play is coming, and I'm gonna fire back, and they're at the top of the circles as they cross the red line, and because they didn't know any better, right? But that was the thing. And now we've got girls that were defense, if you will, since 10U, and now we're like, this is awesome, love playing, and now they're playing up front. Now, will they ever be able to like, what's their ceiling? I don't know, but they went from being close to quitting to now just being so engaged that they're they love it. And I guess ultimately for me, I guess part of it is just in not being so restrictive of their position.
I've got a point that I don't know if everybody's understands the lay of the land, and I'm just using Calgary as an example. And I think Al might be able to speak to this a little bit more. But I'm dealing with Sam Holmes, Girls Hockey Calgary. And at what level do you call it elite? And they have what I call a community program, and then they have an elite program. And at the community program, Sam is faced with the dilemma of parents and players. The percentage might be more like 80%, wanting you to create first lines, second lines, third lines at that age. And obviously it leads to double shifting those players and playing all critical situations, which inhibits their enjoyment and the development of many of them. That's what's happening out here. And I just don't know that there's any solution to that. But Al, your hand's up, and then Tom. So I got my 2 bits in. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add on a little bit about kids hitting the panic button. I think that starts at a really young age. I've seen around here, at least in our area, where the play will be in the defensive end, and the coach will be yelling over the bench to get it out, right? And like you just hear it all the time in the rinks. And from my perspective, we've had a lot of success with just telling the kids, like, make a play, make a pass, skate the puck, don't ever throw it away. If you lose it and they take it and you score, like, it's not the end of the world, we'll get it back, right? And to just have that patience to be able to let them make those mistakes, I think goes an awful long way for them to learn to not hit the panic button. But you got to live with the fact that sometimes they're going to make a pass right in front of the net to somebody else, and they're going to do something, that probably they shouldn't be doing, right? Because they're little kids. So, I don't know, that's my 2 cents on that. Actually, to your point, Wally, about the elite thing. So I actually we had our parity tournament here last weekend, and it's funny. We did all right. There's the way it is here. There's the town hockey, but then the club hockey is kind of separate, and that's your AAA organizations. But within that club world, there's an elite division, underneath that, there's a tier 1 platinum, they call it, and then there's a gold division underneath that, which has 2 divisions, right? So, we were playing in the lower of those divisions, and one of the parents was fine at the tournament, but apparently had contacted the hockey director about being frustrated about being at the lowest level and all this kind of stuff, and about it being a development program, and that's not what they're there for, that kind of thing. And I had a great conversation with our hockey director where he was like, well, even with our elite teams, like they're 10, they're 9, they're 8, isn't even our elite teams are development programs. And we kind of had a great conversation over that. But yeah, it starts young. I mean, they've got 6-year-olds playing the elite.
Go ahead, Tom. I think you're next. Hand up.
Yeah, I think my grandson was saying that, talking about what Dom says, my grandson was saying that a lot of the AAAs in Calgary are now, Willie started that hockey academy near Medicine Hat, Willie Desjardins. I guess a lot of the Royals kids, a lot of kids in Calgary, instead of playing AAA next year, they intend to go to that academy, the Banff Academy he bought, and he moved it there. And Banff Academy never did have very good players, but so that's another thing. So they're going to be playing $35,000 or something instead of playing the AAA. So they're chasing the dream.
Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, I wanted to relay a little tidbit that I had happen to me 2 days ago. I had a coach from our organization email me and said, "How old's your middle daughter?" I said, "She's 5." He goes, "Oh, I have a group of 2016s and some coaches who want to get them going. And, I know all these guys, some of them run hockey schools and all, and we should start getting them on the ice." And again, my daughter would love it, but it's like they're like, "Okay, and you're going to get kids and they're going to come to the camp." And these are U7, like they're 5-year-old girls. So I'm like, okay, like just take a breath. We're not going to have stuffed animals on the ice, but obviously they were brainstorming amongst themselves and thought, hey, let's ask Kim to see how old her daughter is and we'll loop her in. So they're sort of recruiting based on, one played in the NHL, one of the dads, one of the, the other dads played in the O, et cetera, et cetera. So I just thought it was an interesting tidbit that they're now, I guess, hoping that my genetics, maybe my daughter will be better than me, hopefully, is what they're hoping. But I just thought it was interesting that that's how it works at those young age groups. I guess I haven't, I've been at junior so long, you have your pick of the litter. But obviously I'm going to have to get Sammy's daughter to play goalie for us because she's clearly going to be an elite level goalie. So it might be a bit of a commute for you, Sammy, but we'll make it work.
Go ahead, Sammy.
It might be a little bit of a commute for sure. I had actually one of Kenzie's friends who, my daughter's also 5, and played hockey last year. Kenzie just skated and stuff, but this dad was really disappointed that girls hockey does not have super 7s or super 6s? I'm not sure what it is, but boys hockey has that. So
super 7s, yeah.
Super 7s. Doesn't want to get his daughter into girls hockey because he just feels like if they don't have that, then it is basically all downhill. And so, why wouldn't they have that? And he was all over me about it. And why isn't Kenzie going to play super 7 boys or whatever it is? And I said the same thing. I was like, well, she's okay just playing baseball and soccer and gymnastics right now. We'll just see how it goes. But it's hard to have those conversations when as an elite athlete, your trajectory was different, and they all think a certain way, and it's almost like you feel bad saying anything. And so I don't know, Kim, you've probably run into this way more in your profession, but what do you say to people to kind of rein it in without because they have these dreams and these passions and they want the best for their kids, and so what do you say, I guess?
Well, I know for me, I'm lucky because, I didn't learn to play or skate till I was 13. Some would argue I never really did learn to skate, but I could play. So that's like the very easy homegrown answer. I turned out okay, given that trajectory. But, I just emphasize the skill side of it. I said, if you decide you want to be really into it, spend your money and time on, doing skills. And again, not like fun stuff, but it's the overemphasis on games and tournaments and spring hockey. Oh my God, spring hockey here, like is wow. You could make a whole living just coaching spring hockey. You never have to work the rest of the year. So that's what I say is, obviously multi-sport and do, a bunch of different things. And that never seems to be a problem with the girls, quite honestly. All the kids are in my camp this week. They're all getting changed in the parking lot in the van to go to lacrosse or soccer or whatever. In the girls' game, I don't see a lot of the early specialization that I see that might exist in the boys' side. It really, I don't think is a big issue with the girls. But I just encourage them that, like, the point is not to get super competitive early. It might, if you want to become really skilled, it is a huge advantage for girls hockey if you're doing more skill clinics and playing more small area games in that, because most girls don't do that early on. So that might set you on a pretty good path, if you can. But again, you get the late bloomers, and I see them all the time who were playing house league last year, make the A team, and then are double A in 2 years. And that still does happen quite a bit in girls hockey.
Well, that's great advice, because I feel like as you and I navigate this world with younger kids, people will try to rope us into those bigger, brighter, the big lights of doing more and putting more money into it. But that's some great advice to be able to give to these parents that I just always feel bad. I don't want to squash their dreams either. I just know it's wrong.
Well, I'll tell you, Sammy, when I'm like in the parking lot this week, there's like hockey camps running everywhere, right? And I drive my big obnoxious truck with my logo and everything on it. So I get a lot of emails this week from parents of the boys that are on the other side, right? So their son is practicing. They have a daughter who plays. They didn't know I existed. And they're just frantically sending these emails. Like, what do you offer this and this and this and this? And it's like, my boy does this, 400 times a week. Like, what do you have for my daughter? And there just seems like this urgency that they must have learned from being on the boys' side. And it just, they're so excited to have something specific for their daughter. And actually, it's been interesting speaking to a few of them, because of course they corner me in the parking lot, which always takes a little longer than I expect. And, a lot of them have actually relayed, unfortunately, of the 5 conversations I've had in the last 2 weeks, 3 of them said they had their daughters playing with the boys from a young age, and they didn't have great experiences, that there was some bullying and some picking on. And then they brought them over to the girls, and they thought that the girls weren't quite serious enough. And now their daughters aren't playing because they don't know, like, they don't want to go back to the boys because they were getting picked on or didn't feel included, perhaps. But they didn't feel like the girls were good enough for their daughter. Right. And so now a couple of them actually have taken their daughters out, which I don't think is the right solution. But I wasn't aware, I haven't heard stories about that, of girls playing boys at a younger age and really being picked on. I guess I wrongly assumed that once you're 8, 9, 10, 11, and, you sort of.
Well, I can certainly tell you that I signed Kenzie up for baseball, and I don't know why I wanted her to play baseball as opposed to softball, but I went to an organization where it's going to be mixed, because she does that much better with girls around. And I know that about her. You know that about your kids. And I got the roster, and it was all boys. And so I emailed the organizers, and they're like, well, the coaches are actually 2 females, which is amazing. And so right at the last minute, another girl signed up. So we took her to baseball. And when I was talking to my dad about it, she's like, she'll be fine. You played with all boys your whole time. And I was like, yeah, but 100 of my peers quit and never played. I was the only one, so yeah, one makes it through and it becomes this like great thing. Right. But I had to kind of sit my dad down to be like, some kids, that's just not for them. Like, you need to know what is good for your kid. And yeah, anyway, so I found that interesting, that old school mentality despite all of that. So I digress. Tim has a question.
Well, thanks, Sammy. Not a question so much as just a comment, because I always feel like it's so easy for us, and I'm guilty as anybody, to denigrate or be negative about the game playing mentality, basically in Canada, versus practicing and skill development. And as I always am quick to point out, like, there needs to be a balance. I started thinking, like when Kim said, oh, somebody's recruiting her 5-year-old to start on a team. It's like, well, okay, I'll let her play, but you got to let them play. I don't want her out there being given 1,000 instructions. Let her fall in love with the game. And, you know, Wally, we see this all the time in the work that we did with P3 down in Medicine Hat, all those multiple puck games for the learning kids so that everybody goes home and has scored a goal and can get excited about the game. I think that gets lost a lot of time where like we tend to all overcoach and want to impart all of our wisdom on these kids instead of just letting them play the practice. And that would be at the PWHL level too. Why don't we scrimmage more? Why don't we just have more East-West games, let them play and enjoy the game a bit more? So it's always a balance. You can't do all of one, all of the other, but I think that the scale is now tipping to the point where everybody's spending all their time doing skills and practicing and instead of just playing.
Yeah, and I think what I was speaking about is, you know, that people seem to have this driving desire to play structured games, like what they see, you know, on the television, right? And the score being kept and all of those things. But, you know, it's funny, I said to my daughter, I said, well, if there are other girls your age, you know, would you want to come on the ice with mommy? And she goes, yeah, what are their names? What are the girls' names? And I was like, I don't know their names. She's like, I need to know their names. I was like, oh, okay. So I have to find their names, right? But this is, you know, again, I think sometimes we talked about this, maybe it was last week or the week before, like, you know, I'm asking her whether she wants to do it. And she's not worried about like, is she going to become an Olympian or something? She doesn't even know what that means. She just wants to like know what the girls' names are. So she can go and make some new friends, right? So I think that gave me some good perspective there. But, you know, I do think if you have parents who have the passion and some baseline knowledge to be able to teach basic skill to these players, because again, as we talked about earlier in the call, I do think that's missing. I do think you have a lot of great volunteers who are happy to help out at the U7 and U9 level with the girls, but they haven't been taught enough of how to run, you know, skill drills that are still fun in small area games. They go right into flow drills, and I'm sure you've all seen flow drills with U7 and U9 players. It takes them 45 minutes to get to the other end of the ice to complete the flow drill because they lose the puck 12 times, you know. So I do think they're, you know, and I think in Europe, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they have their better coaches actually coaching at the younger levels and developing them early on. So I guess I'll be doing that for a couple of years as my daughters are young, but I do think it is missing. And those coaches, those volunteer coaches know it. They know they don't have the right resources. And because they're not skills instructors, they default to more flow drills or, you know, things they're familiar with from their own playing days. So, you know, I think the education of coaches at those younger ages who are volunteers needs to be better for sure.
I think you're up, Wally.
Yeah, Kim, related to that, before COVID, I was watching a female U12 practice, girls hockey Calgary. They had a real cross-section of kids out there. And the opening activity drill was a neutral zone double touch pass, 2-on-0 rush. Well, and they stayed with it a long time. And there were a couple of players who I think were above the skill of everybody. And I sat there watching. I was supposed to speak to some of the board. Sam in particular was in a board meeting, and I watched this exercise where they really didn't understand the cross section of kids, and it did no good. It was the coaches trying to do a drill they had seen, copied from YouTube, applying it to an age group where they just didn't have the skills to do that drill. And so you're better off to create small area games, increase the activity, and let them play and have fun. If you cannot teach the skills to be done in the drills, that's the dilemma. Now, I don't know. I'm going to go back to Tom Malloy here. And I know we're talking about young girls, but I'm going to Tom and mentioning the Royals organization, and you've heard that some players are going to Willie's camp next year. Is that correct, Tom?
Your mic's off, Tom.
I don't know if he's still on.
Yeah,
Or...
yeah. My grandson, who played in the Royals, so he knows a lot of the kids. He said that's what's happening is there's, I guess, one kid from the Royals is going to play for the Tigers next year, and so a whole bunch of them. And I would assume they've been recruiting from the AAA, that Willie's been doing that.
Yeah.
But there's just that perception that the sports schools are better.
Yeah. Well, I have an insight on that situation. I did the mission statement exercise with the 4 lead board members. And one of them, the president, I'm pretty close to. He's an older fella, my age, but I mentored him in the Northeast. And he's adamant about the philosophy of development, low play, and managing the bench better, because my only fear is if they just played games, it would be good if they played everybody. They'd have more fun. But they don't. They just play the best players in all situations to try to win games. And now that's the dilemma, I think, out there with the so-called private programs and elite teams. If they manage the bench fairly to develop everybody and allow them to play, I wouldn't have any difficulty with that. But it's that model and those players leaving for that reason. And I think let them leave and just let the group of people that wants to contribute to development. In the long term, you're going to be better off and have more success. So somebody asked a question about the board members. The one was the president, Dale Peters, and I've been on the phone with him twice a week. I'm looking for, got a call from a Drumheller Dragons looking for a young, enthusiastic assistant coach, and Dale reached out to a couple of his existing head coaches to see if they were interested in that opportunity. And he's very open-minded about coaches developing and players developing. And those players leaving could be his demise in an organization. So the effort to do it right in the right way, Kim, you've been able to do that over a long period of time where you are. And I think that's a challenge that we all face. And your kids are growing up, Kim and Sammy, and going through that now and experiencing that. So that's just my thoughts on it, how it all connects. It really does connect. How young do you get too serious about winning and your kid developing to be on a so-called winner, whatever that means? So, Kim, you have your hand up?
Jeez, I'm going to get this mute thing down soon. It's the Ivy League degree, right? Right, Tim? Didn't go to the right school. So I was going to say that with the academies, I wonder if part of it, and we don't have a lot of academies in Ontario, like they're just not a big thing. And I think that's tends to be because the level of the leagues that we have are sort of meant to be or supposed to be the highest level. So players aspire to that as opposed to more of the academy format. But I wonder if some of, either the sales pitch or the intrigue for the academy is the fact that they could train a little bit more and get on the ice more. And again, I can't speak to how that looks in Calgary or any other, city, but I know on the girls' side, if you're only practicing twice a week and you've got, 1 or 2 games and, some parents, some players, that may not be enough ice, right? Especially if your team practices aren't at all skill heavy, right? So, I can only speak to my experience and when I was at the Peak School for elite athletes, I was there for 5 years with the girls hockey program, and that's where Connor McDavid went. So I never taught him anything, but boy, did he look good on the ice. And we never played any games. This was actually, I think, a very good model. We didn't play games. we just skated in the morning for 45 minutes, 4 days a week. And I would spend 45 minutes working on backhand passes. Like I had no performance drive to say, okay, well, these girls need to be able to beat school X next week, or, I need to shorten the bench so that we win in the third period. Because we didn't play games, right? They all developed tremendously, and all of them went on to play college hockey. So I'm not suggesting that's the ideal format, because of course, those girls also played in their club system. And, for some of them, it was enough hockey. For some of them, it might have been too much hockey. And we certainly didn't bag skate them in our skills sessions, but it was pure skills to supplement what they did in their team environment. So, again, I think that's a pretty unique type of model. But I know it had a lot of success on the boys' side. There's quite a few of those guys who are in the NHL now. And when we had a girls program, it was quite successful. And I think the lack of team play or driving those players to play together as a unit was extremely valuable. I don't know whether parents would necessarily fork out the money for something like that if they then had to fork out the money for a club team as well. But in terms of player development, that's by far the best model I've ever taught in, because again, we could really hammer down skills and do stationary passing or do snapshots or do things that in a typical team practice, you're not always going to slow things down and get super technical. So, that was my experience at an academy, but my sense in the West is those are sort of their full-time teams. That's not, it's not in addition to playing for a club team. If I'm correct, I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think you are correct, Kim. I think they're a little more prevalent out west here. I think partly because of the numbers game. Like, there's a lot fewer players, so the higher leagues, at least in a lot of people's perception, it's harder to collect enough good players together in various communities to have a high quality team. So that's partly how it got off the ground, I think, more so out west. I don't know. But there certainly is, as you mentioned, a real value, all those sports schools, and Dom's maybe going to be getting into one or is into one. Being on the ice every day is a huge bonus of those, like you pointed out, of those programs. Like, how do you replace 2 extra hours of practice every week, if that's what it is, if what it came down to? Like, that's invaluable in terms of your skill development, your player development, your hockey sense development. So there is definitely some value there. Go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, I was just going to add, because I've looked at a lot of the models of the different sports schools, like, for instance, the Edge in Calgary, and then there's Nichols in Buffalo, or there's, whether it's North Star Academy in Minnesota. And, I think from my perspective, the thing that was attractive to me, and I wish I had it when I was growing up, is the ability to play another sport. There's 30 sports at the school that I'm at. And so, for instance, like, I'm having conversations with the baseball coach as to when our schedule is going to end and when theirs is going to begin, because that's important to me from so many different reasons, that they play another sport, especially. And I get it that, certain, they're like, well, I really need to focus on hockey. And I'm like, well, there's a girl that came and that really loves softball. And she's like, you know what, I really haven't had the time to play. And I'm like, well, that to me is one of the main reasons why you would be coming to this school, is that I would be, like, open to be able to play a different sport. I know I have my girls playing soccer, and it's a constant struggle. Like, there was clubs here that they wouldn't take my girl. They're like, you absolutely cannot miss. Like, everybody preaches the multi-sport and long-term athletic development, but when it comes to taking field time or ice time away from their team, then they want nothing to do with it. So we picked our soccer club, based on the fact that, like, from the beginning, I said, there'll be times that we miss, and we'll let you know when we won't be there. But that's just the way it's going to be. And I've gotten into it with hockey coaches that they have dry land in the parking lot. They're running them around the parking lot, and our girls are going to soccer practice, and they'll be like, well, they can't miss dryland. I'm like, well, they're going to be at soccer practice. Well, no, they can't. They can't miss. They really, really can't miss. I said, well, I guess you should pick somebody else, because like that's. But and again, you know, if it's my parents that when I went through it, and if someone had mentioned them to them that we would miss, they would be okay, right? Because they don't know, right? They wouldn't have known any better. So I think from from my perspective, the multi-sport thing, like I see it, like, and again, seeing some of our guys with the overuse injuries, like there's a first round pick that was through our program with Calgary, and he first round pick, and by the time he was 22, he literally like he he wasn't progressing. He was elite when he was 10, and only played one sport, and he had hip issues, shoulder issues, and to be honest, it was like he's burnt out. He was absolutely burnt out to the point where he just really didn't care anymore, right? He had just been hockey all the time from when he was whatever age, probably or probably 10 on, and he just didn't have the fire. And the guys that made it, or a lot of the guys, or I should say the guy, most of the guys that I find that make it, like you ask them if they played different sports growing up, and the majority have. And their athleticism is better. Again, I'm generalizing, but if I were to take a snapshot and say the vast majority of the guys that are able to improve in their 20s and their mid 20s and are able to adapt to as the levels go higher, I would say the multi-sport dimension is one that is a common theme. So, so short-sighted that I've been told this multiple times living here in California. Well, they need to 13 is the year that they should be sport specific, and I really, really disagree. And as I say, in our program here, that is one thing that you have to play. Like I'm telling kids they're coming in, you have to play a couple sports. Sorry, like and some of them are, well, I don't have another sport. I kind of play golf. I said, okay, well, you're going to, you're going to have to, that it's just, if you want to come here, that's just a part of the deal. So again, that's something I really believe in. And again, seeing it from the top down, I see the effects of guys that only play the one to me, it's detrimental.
Kim?
I think it's interesting. I remember one of Matt's players, who was one of my captains, who's now going to be his captain. She used to skate with me in the summer, and she played soccer as well. And she happened to have a soccer game immediately after our ice session, so just around the back of the building. She's like, "Oh, I play soccer," and I have soccer practice. You don't know if they're playing like house league soccer or high level soccer, and so me and my coaches went back, and wasn't she the best player on the team by like a country mile? And like it was, they were playing this high level team from Hamilton who just, annihilated them. But their whole team strategy is like, get the ball to this kid. And she's like, yeah, I just play soccer. And so I think it's very interesting with the girls. We used to say, and I know Sammy would know this, right? Like if you put any Olympian in another sport, they're probably pretty elite at that other sport. Like if you put, if you had the Olympic team play soccer, like they probably are going to look okay. Some will be more elite than others, but I think with the girls, they're really, I just don't see a lot of specialization, to be honest with you. They are the rarity. What I do see is, what Dom is saying about, the junior coaches, the midget AA coaches saying, well, you can't miss for anything, to the point where kids will make OFSA, Ontario championships in another sport. And the coach is like, well, you can't miss practice. Like you can't miss practice to go win an Ontario championship. Well, because it's, and again, I think we lose a little bit of perspective here. And we all know the benefit of playing the multiple sports and what that's going to bring back to the kids. But, the only time I've ever, incited that rule is if we're like second or third round of the playoffs and you have a practice and it conflicts with our practice, then I'm going to ask you to maybe choose hockey over that, but it is quite normal, mostly with the older age groups here with girls, to say, well, you can never miss anything. I don't even know what the consequences would be. I guess, like, I don't know if you would take them on the team or if it's just a threat, an idle threat, to say you can never miss anything to try and scare the girls. But I've never seen the multiple sports hurt a player. It's never been something that's hindered their development. It's only helped their development. Now hopefully that would translate to the boys' side, but it sounds like it doesn't. And they're just hockey all the time.
Yeah, I think I would probably wholeheartedly agree with your last statement, Kim. Like, I'm a big multi-sport person myself. Like, I don't think that could ever really hurt you. The big debate, of course, is when do you start to specialize? As Dom mentioned, like, pretty hard to argue against anything, sort of, except for me, it would be sort of in that 13, 14, 15 age range where you really got to zero in if you want to be an elite player. And I would just dearly love someone to really delve into that and do a really long-term study of all the elite players, both on the female side and on the male side at the NHL and Division I in Europe and stuff like that. Just how many multi-sport athletes are there? How long were they multi-sport athletes? How many specialized from the age of 8 in their sport? Like, what do the numbers really say? I would love to see that study, or somebody do that study, because I think it'd be really, really interesting. But just to sort of counterpoint to your comment, Kim, about maybe all the Olympic athletes would be naturally really good multi-sport athletes. Now, my Vermont team was anything but Olympic level hockey players, but certainly they were elite level hockey players in one sense of the word, Division I hockey players. But I was honestly shocked when we did play team building games like kickball in the gym or something, how many totally unathletic people we had on the team that couldn't catch a big round utility kickball when it's hit right to them. Like, they there was no athleticism. It was shocking. And undoubtedly, many of them did specialize, and maybe were only one sport, or maybe it's just that I had a lower level athlete at that time, but it's quite shocking. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had the girls play volleyball, so we have a beach volleyball. I've arranged, like, I'm busing girls in, and then just to see the campus, and we played beach volleyball, and then we'll take them on the ice and like a little bit of a camp. And you see, obviously, some of them that have played club, but even like some of the best girls and there's one girl from Toronto. She moved here her dad played our coach AAA a couple years ago with the son, and the daughter's really good. She's 2008, but even catching the ball, so I had to obviously modify the volleyball game where the ball came over the net, and you just catch it, and then you threw it to a teammate who then bumped or set it back over top, and she had zero idea. Like, the ball was coming over, and it was, and in my head I was like, this is all the more reason that she needs to be exposed to these different stimulus. Like, how much better would she be if you were to be able to, like, have her doing these other types of sports? So again, she's 13, I guess, right? And, like, for all intents and purposes, like, she's gone to these Western Select, like, probably, maybe Tim, maybe, I don't know who you had watching. She was probably there, one of the kids, and she was one of the better ones on those teams. So again, about their longer term athletic development, like, they need to play other sports. Like, in my opinion, is they need to play other sports, because it's just like anything. If someone were to sit there and throw me a ball and I would volley it back, or I'd bump it back, and yeah, that would grow old really, really fast. But if all of a sudden, like, I played a game, like, they would, intuitively figure out ways of shaping their body. And I mean, yeah, there's the deliberate practice that would need to be done initially at the beginning, but I would think that, jumping, spatial awareness, like everything else that falls into a volleyball would be very beneficial for them to do. So to me, it should be a part of their development. And again, like, seeing some of the girls move that weren't moving very well. And I think part of that is just because they've never been exposed to it, right?
Sammy, I'm shocked by this swimming. I'm not a great swimmer, nor do I like swimming, but I want to hear more about this water polo story. And the
Jim, do you
swim
remember in
test.
2006 the
Oh, yeah.
triathlon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it just really shocked me with the lack of just pure survival ability. That this is just a sport to me it's not a sport. It is just water safety. You need to learn how to do this. And several did not have that or feel comfortable or, it was, I think we started to see sports specialization. The 2002 team was not like that at all. And it was different, and I think that was because those women, we all played a bunch of different sports because there wasn't these sort of aspirations. But the 2006 team started to see people that had gone to hockey schools, that had done all these things to get to that level, So I think that started to change the game in women's hockey for sure.
Yeah, that is an interesting. I never thought about that before. How the 2002 team would have been almost certainly all multi-sport for a long time. Multi-sport,
right? Because there was no other choice, right? Yeah.
And it was sort of that next generation that we started to see the specialization. So
yeah, right around that time. I mean, who knows? Studies would be interesting to know about that sort of time frame, the changeover. But
Sammy, in 2002 at Valcartier, and I had typed this out, but I deleted it because I don't think I had the right name. We were playing flag football, and there was a female athlete that could throw a football better than any quarterback I ever had.
probably Piper or Vicky Sanahara.
Yeah.
So Vicky Sanahara, if they had football in the Olympics, would have chosen it. She played a ton, and all of her Brampton teammates played with her on teams, but she was so good. So she could see the field. I watched them play several times. But then Piper, I don't know if you remember Piper. I mean, here's this young punk kid coming in with her UNC basketball shorts over her knees with high top basketball shoes on. And she was so fast. I mean, just so fast, and could sort of maneuver in and out. She was just an incredible athlete when it came to football, for sure. And she could chuck the length of the field.
I think Hef played a lot too, right, Sammy?
So Hef played with Vicky, but Vicky would have been the better player. Hef played football like she played hockey, and that she just went down the wing fast, and then Vicky would just Hail Mary pass to Hef, which is kind of how we played with Hef hockey too. Just let her go and then give her the puck way down the ice.
I know. I remember well at the boot camp there in PEI 2005 that they lobbied real hard to have some flag football thrown in one day, which was fun to watch.
Yeah, we also got to play a lot of those were really fun camps because we got to play. I think we played baseball. We did a lot of kind of random activities, one of which was water polo, which was my favorite, but not for most of my teammates, was not their favorite.
Yeah. A lot of it was a long days, but fun days. It was really terrific. Just
and volleyball and Haibo and anyways, go on.
Soccer, everything. Just to change the topic just a little bit, because I didn't want to get off without getting your perspective, Sammy, on the and everybody else's on the Las Vegas goalie shuffle this week.
Interesting, right? I wish I knew.
And who starts tonight is the final.
Yeah, so I think Robin Leonard probably starts tonight because they lost. I mean, but the weight of the series do you go with your, your guy that got you there kind of thing? I mean, both are really great goalies. And what I like about what I'm seeing is from their two perspectives, as much as the media covers, they seem to really be supporting each other. And so, both cognizant that it is not their choices that this is happening. Robin Leonard has worked a lot with mental health. And so he's very vocal about some of the struggles and that Fleury has been there for him and that they are friends. And, but yeah, that would be tough to just the unknown, but I'm hoping that despite all this, there was these kind of plans and there was this kind of discussion and conversation. We talked a lot about this during the goalie symposium, the 3-day, how to coach goalies, and that these kind of things are okay to do as long as you're having these conversations with the goalies, to let them know that, this is plan A, this is plan B, this is a plan all the way down to N, T, whatever. But, talk through those scenarios. How are you guys going to feel? How are you guys going to support each other? How should we tell you guys? All of those discussions need to be had with the goalie, so that it is done in the right way, so that mentally they are able to come back the next game, to be able to play and be there for the team too. So I think Leonard's going to play. I don't know. We could probably do a poll on this call, but.
Any thoughts, Bob? Dom? Anybody? Matt?
I think it'll be Fleury.
You think it'll be Fleury?
Yeah, I think if you go back to last year when Leonard struggled, he put in Fleury and played the one game and went right back to Leonard. So I think he'll do the same thing again. And
do you think that it being in Montreal, that they'll play Fleury because it's in Montreal?
No, I just think he'll play him because it's the guy that got them there. He did the same thing last year with Leonard. He give him a game off and put him right back in again. So I think he'll follow that same pattern. I think Fleury has been their guy all year, and I think last year when the controversy with the sword in the back, I think that was him saying to Fleury that, I mean, Pete didn't put the sword in his back, but the cartoon, whatever it was. But I think that was his way of saying that Leonard's our man, and we're sticking with him come hell or high water. He got us here, and we're gonna dance him the rest of the way. And I think we'll do the same thing with Fleury this year. I think it's the fair thing to do. And
do you think he's had that conversation with Fleury too?
I think they had a conversation before Leonard went in the net, and I think they've had a plan all along. You'll go in for a game, and
that's good.
And you go right back in. That's what I think.
Yeah, hopefully that's the way it should be, right?
I've got a question at that level. Traditionally, and Dom, you could speak to this, at an elite level, if you're hot, you stay in. If you win, you're in. If you lose, you're out. And Tim, you had mentioned on a text last night, you questioned the overcoaching. I thought Leonard came in, he won, he played very well. I would have started him again and not put in Fleury. And that's a gut call by a coach. And there's a point, Sammy, where you talk to your goalies and say, look, at times I'm going to make a gut decision. We may agree on, a philosophy of trying to get the most out of both of you. But in the end, the head coach has to be able to make a decision like that with both goalies, may not like, but they have to respect.
Yeah, you're so right, Wally. And we had, is it Torigny? Is that how you say his name? Who just won the World Championships?
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
So he led one of the discussions one day, and he was like, I'm the head coach. Like, the goalie coach answers to me. When you guys are working with NHL clubs, you answer to me. I get to make the final decision. And I think you're right, Wally, that ultimately the goalie, it is the head coach's decision. But I think there can be conversations with the goalie in how do you want to have these conversations? How do you want me to tell you? Would you prefer I told you? Would you prefer the goalie coach? Before any of that happens, having that conversation to know how to, so that goalie can be the best for the next game, just in case. I think you always have to prepare one game in advance for the goalies, because mentally it can be fragile at times, as we all know, with goaltenders, and so you're preparing them. But I think you're right, Wally, that ultimately, sometimes it just doesn't go your way. It's a coach's gut decision, and you need to mentally prepare for that as well.
I think they've created a problem by the way they've handled that. And it's not the decision most people would have made, but I think most of the people that express their opinions are pretty knowledgeable hockey people. And I respect the head coach in his role. And if he made it based on his gut and his feeling, more power to him. They have the authority to do that. I just don't know at that level with two number one goalies, you create a bit of a predicament that requires a clear understanding of being able to coach with your gut. Because I think the best coaches do that. It's not analytics, it's not a book and theory and science. There's a point where at a time like that, a decision has to be made, and the head coach is going to make it, and he can take the heat for the loss, not the goalie.
Well, in this case, you've got two number one goalies. In most cases, you have a number one and a number two. What would be the difference if you had a 1 and 2? You would always go back to your number one, would you not?
No, I would go back to number
Unless the
one.
guy-
I agree with you, Bob. I've said you got two number one goalies. Leonard went in one game and played poorly. He wasn't good in the first game. In the second game, he was better than Fleury's been. And I'm judging that as a coach watching a goalie play, two goalies play in the playoffs. Who's best now? What's important now? It's not their feelings, their state of mind. It's who's performing. And at that point, Leonard had recovered and played a game. He won. He deserved to stay in the net, in my mind. But I think that's where I believe that overcoaching can be a problem. And I'm just saying that's the way I would handle that situation, but I'm not there and I'm not experienced enough to be there.
I don't disagree with you in principle, but did Fleury play bad, or was it a bad bounce with a spinning puck off the boards that hit the heel of the stick at the inappropriate time in the game? Maybe Stahl shouldn't have played the next game because he threw it out in front of his net in the first period and they scored on him.
Well, I think we're getting into debates that have nothing to do, with it. When you can judge the mistake the way you judge it, I judge it the way I judge it. That head coach has to filter what's happened and weigh what's happened to make a decision that is going to get the result. And to me, who knows how it's going to end up? But if it's easy to coach after the fact from a distance. Dom, you've got a point.
I think Matt was first,
Oh,
Wally.
sorry, Matt. Go ahead, Matt.